Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines, a show where we take complex national and international issues and make them intelligible for our viewers. Today, we are looking at the so-called Trump-Gaza peace plan, the US president's proposal unveiled this week that many countries around the world have broadly welcomed in the hope that it will bring about a swift end to Israel's genocidal war on the people of Palestine living in the Gaza Strip. Israel's war on Gaza has already killed around 66,000 people, more than half of whom are women and children. The Israeli military has created famine-like conditions in Gaza and brought tens of thousands to the brink of starvation. It is now busy flattening Gaza City and appears determined to turn the entire strip into a pile of rubble. Israeli leaders have been indicted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes, and there is an outstanding arrest warrant for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and others. The International Court of Justice has said that it is plausible that the acts committed by Israel in Gaza would fall within the provisions of the Genocide Convention, and it remains actively seized of the matter. This is the immediate context in which the Palestinian Authority, all key Arab states, and many countries around the world have endorsed the key thrust of the Trump plan, even as they have major reservations over several of its aspects. We have with us today Talmiz Ahmad, a leading expert on West Asia, someone who has served as India's ambassador to Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Oman, and written and spoken extensively about the problems of the Middle East. But before we speak to him, to understand both the big picture and the fine print of the Trump plan, let me briefly summarize its main components for you. There are 6 elements of the Trump plan, and I will run through each of them quickly so that we can then begin to analyze the strength and weakness of what Trump is proposing. First, the immediate military part. A ceasefire will begin once both sides agree. Battle lines will be frozen, but there is no Israeli withdrawal. All hostages, alive and deceased, will be released within 72 hours. Israel releases 250 lifetime Palestinian convicts and 1,700 post-October the 7th detainees, including women and children, in exchange. Second, relief and humanitarian. Here, the plan proposes immediate large-scale humanitarian aid consistent with the January 19th, 2025 agreement, which in plain English means 600 trucks a day. In addition, infrastructure rehabilitation will be carried out, mainly water, power, sewage, hospital and bakeries. The plan also envisages entry of rubble removal equipment and road clearing machinery. Aid distribution will be not via the US-Israeli sponsored NGO that was set up, but by the UN, Red Crescent and neutral agencies. The third leg of the plan is political. Gaza is to be governed temporarily by a so-called technocratic Palestinian committee. Control over the region will be exercised by a so-called International Board of Peace, to be chaired by Donald Trump himself and with other global leaders, many of them controversial like Tony Blair, being part of this. This arrangement is supposed to continue indefinitely until a so-called reformed Palestinian Authority can take control. Hamas is expected to give up its arms. It's demanded that it must give up its arms and will be excluded from governance in any form. The fourth leg of the Trump plan is economic. Essentially, there's a Trump economic development plan for Gaza with an expert panel to design investments. There will be establishment of a special economic zone with apparently preferential tariffs and market access. Third, there will be international investment to create jobs, growth and reconstruction. At least that's the plan, that's the promise. And there will be no forced displacement. The plan says this. Gazans will be free to leave or return, but encouraged to stay and rebuild. The fifth element of the Trump plan, security. It envisages the creation of a US-backed International Stabilization Force, or ISF, with Arab partners to train Palestinian police and secure the borders. There will be gradual withdrawal of the Israeli Defense Forces as the ISF assumes control with a security perimeter until Gaza is so-called terror-free. Importantly, the plan does not provide any timeline for this. There will be, or is supposed to be, full demilitarization of Gaza. Tunnels, weapons and production facilities are all to be destroyed. There will be an amnesty for Hamas members who disarm and safe passage abroad for those who choose exile. And of course, internationally monitored disarmament with the buyback reintegration scheme with the regional and international partners guaranteeing compliance. The sixth leg of the Trump plan, peace process. Here the plan is decidedly vague. There is talk of an interfaith dialogue to foster cultural and narrative change, a US-led political dialogue between Israel and Palestinians on future coexistence, and in the long run, the plan says that conditions may finally be put in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, provided Gaza redevelopment progresses and the Palestinian Authority reform is faithfully carried out. If these 6 areas constitute the essence of the Trump plan, here's what the document made public on Monday ignores. First, there is no role for the United Nations in establishing political authority or in establishing the stabilization force. In other words, what is envisaged is not even UN trusteeship, but private trusteeship. Second, there is to be no prosecution for war crimes and crimes against humanity. At least the plan is completely silent on that. Third, there is no discussion of Israeli reparations for the destruction the IDF has caused, which is well in excess of any plausible claim of military necessity. Fourth, the provision of relief, actually, aid, is weaponized and tied to the acceptance of Trump's plan in its entirety. Fifth, there is no provision whatsoever in the short term, perhaps even in the long term, for elections or democratic representation for the people of Gaza. Six, no security guarantees are given to the Palestinians who are expected to disarm, including in the West Bank. And seven, no ban on Israeli settlements and expropriation of Palestinian land, especially again in the West Bank. Bearing all of this in mind, keeping this in the background, let me now turn to you, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad. You have read the plan, you've studied it, you've heard my summary of it, and we are very keen to hear your expert perspective on it. At one level, the plan represents, shall we say, a failure of the Israeli military to accomplish on the battlefield what it said it wanted to accomplish, which was complete destruction of Hamas, reoccupation, perhaps even annexation of Gaza. There was talk of integrating Gaza back into sort of full-fledged Israeli occupation. These were the war aims that the Israelis spoke about, of course, in a vague manner. Clearly, the Israelis have not been able to accomplish those aims despite overwhelming superiority in military terms. And somewhere down the line, at least based on my reading of the Trump plan, it seems as if they're trying to get through the Trump peace plan something which they were unable to accomplish through the battlefield. You read the plan, you've been through it in detail. To your mind, and let's think of the plan in short, medium, and long term. What are the immediate obstacles or problems, assuming Hamas says yes, by the way, to the Trump plan as it stands? Where do you think the immediate fault lines lie?
Prime Minister Netanyahu's immediate concern is for the release of the hostages. He's under tremendous domestic pressure in this regard. Week upon week upon week, there are hundreds of thousands of people coming out onto the streets, and he's being very severely criticized. Simultaneously, he's being criticized for the violence, the genocide that he has carried out. The images of people suffering starvation deliberately as an instrument of war has also got him a degree of odium as far as sections of the international opinion are concerned. So what he is looking for, and has a very powerful ally in Donald Trump, is to shift the responsibility for these two events onto someone else, to say Hamas. He wants this peace plan, so-called peace plan, because it's a laughable joke straight away. This so-called peace plan, what it does is, it then puts the burden upon Hamas for accepting a ceasefire, a truce. in 72 hours, those remaining hostages are to be released and the bodies of those who have passed away are to be released. This is the first part. So that if the Hamas doesn't accept this plan, he can tell his own people that, look, I tried my best, the American president tried, and we couldn't make any progress in this regard because this is a terrorist organization, it would rather get people killed. The second thing is the further killing of Palestinians. He's already reached 66,000. There is no limit. He can go as far as possible. And that is when now he will no longer be criticized. Anyone who dies at the end, say from now onward, will be blamed on Hamas. So this is the immediate concern that he has. It's a very, very cynical approach of two people. There is one more factor. President Trump's desperate desire to be shortlisted and awarded the Nobel Prize. Initially, when I heard this, I thought it was a bit of a joke. And yet it isn't. It is embarrassing for us to see the spectacle of an American president so openly canvassing his candidature. I don't think this has happened for as long as we can remember. And he has these sycophantic brethren who keep on egging him on, including our friends the Pakistanis, who keep on toting up his achievements. There is no achievement. But if he has this peace plan going through, there is very shortly going to be the Nobel Committee meeting, and he wants that prize so badly it hurts. These are the immediate implications and the timing of all that is happening. A very cynical, a very, very cruel, and a completely discreditable event.
So in a sense, what Trump and Netanyahu have done is to upend 20, 25 years of established peace plan, peace processes that Israel itself has disregarded wantonly, which were negotiated and which Israel is officially committed to, the US is committed to supporting. What they're trying to do through this plan is completely tear everything up, and present a new kind of an approach to resolving not just the crisis caused by Israel's war against the people of Gaza, but more generally the sort of question of peace process and the two-state solution. And I guess there the backdrop is Israel's unhappiness at the fact that France, the UK, Australia have recognized Palestine, as an independent country. As they say in Urdu, der aaye durust aaye, perhaps, or not even, or in English, maybe too little, too late. But one word or concept that is missing from the Trump plan in its entirety is justice. Israel has committed war crimes against humanity. As we mentioned in the introduction, you have outstanding warrants against Netanyahu and others from the ICC. There's the allegation of genocide. Does this plan mean that Israel and its leaders get a free pass? And should we interpret the support that this peace plan has generated from India, Pakistan, of course, but key countries in the region, the world? Does this mean that they're okay with Israel walking away?
First, I should clarify that in West Asia there has been no peace plan since the Oslo Accord. That was the last effort 35 years ago, when an effort was made to address the fundamental issues that divide the Israeli from the Palestinian, and was looking forward to a final settlement. Of course, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin ended all that. After that, there has been no serious attempt. What you have seen are temporary ceasefires, temporary truces. And their record is very, very poor, because from the Palestinian side, there is some attack, however lethal, because they are a people who are beleaguered, they live under occupation, they suffer extraordinary privation. And the Israelis then retaliate disproportionately. So if 2 Israelis are killed or 5 or 6 are killed, they kill 2,000 and get away with impunity. I should also remind you that in January there was a ceasefire arrangement that Israel had accepted, which was sponsored by Donald Trump, negotiated by Witkoff, and it was to have been implemented within a very specific time frame, in a 3-part time frame, 3 phases. And nobody mentions the fact that Netanyahu withdrew from it and was never castigated by Donald Trump. So how can you take this one seriously?
And now there's a sneaky reference to that agreement in
and
this
now
plan.
they have unashamedly referred to it in
Right.
this agreement.
Right.
Where we are concerned now, I only see this as a temporary arrangement to serve Netanyahu's interests and Donald Trump's interests. I don't think Netanyahu is particularly bothered about countries recognizing the Palestinian state. He has made it very clear that on his watch, there will never be a Palestinian state. A two-state solution is actually staring at you, because in that territory, which is today Israel and the occupied territories, the non-Jews number as much as the Jews. So there is no way. Now, genocide has been tried out. In 2 years, you've killed 65,000 people. But you have not really made a demographic difference. Genocide doesn't kill a movement. It does not kill an idea. It does not kill an aspiration. I remember that in Bob Woodward's book, War, Biden is frequently shown as telling Netanyahu, look, Bibi, you can't win. You have no strategy. You can't annihilate Hamas. Hamas is not just people. It is an idea. And unless you address the idea, you're not going anywhere. And Netanyahu pretended he didn't hear any of this, nor did the American president have any capacity to see it through. So I think that where we are concerned, because of the record that we have of Netanyahu for the last 20 years or so, he wants certain very specific things to happen. Otherwise, he has the option of continued conflict in which he is primarily interested. He keeps on continuing this war of attrition so that he keeps on inflicting damage upon people and doesn't do anything. The problem of hostages is the one that he really needs to address quickly. And the mass murder of Palestinians, he has to shift the blame, as I mentioned earlier. And that is his priority concern, nothing else.
And you think that this is essentially just a gambit to buy time and shift the blame?
Absolutely. After that, we can talk about it as we go along, but with deep respect to the authorities concerned, I can't see anyone particularly see it. Can you imagine a board with Donald Trump as the chair? Is this a corporate sector? It's 2.5 million people live in Gaza. It's been an open-air prison. A Jewish observer has called it a concentration camp. And you set up a board with the American president to discuss real estate? I mean, it's an embarrassment, it's a travesty.
This brings me to my next question, which is that the plan's structure, top-down, so-called technocratic, there's no mention of the UN. How realistic is it that the people of Gaza and Palestine, I mean, the rest of the world seems to have said, okay, go ahead, try it out. But how realistic is it that the people of Gaza and Palestine are going to accept or will submit to this kind of private trusteeship?
See, at one level, as students of history, we cannot but admit that we've seen all this before. This is one more cruel, bloody, merciless encounter of the Israeli military force seeking to crush Palestinian aspirations and hopefully Palestinian identity. It has not happened, but that doesn't mean that successive Israeli leaders have given up trying this. This is what we are. This is mass murder is the only instrument available with Israel as far as the Palestinian aspirations are concerned. For the rest, none of this. Now you have the people there, the 2.3 million people. You've killed 66,000 of them, but the rest are still there. 2.3 million people are still there. And all the genocide in the world is not going to extinguish an idea. I remind people, I mean, this is a very cynical thing to say, but it's a fact of history. Genocide was tried out earlier against the Jews by the Nazis. And in 6 years, they killed 6 million Jews, 2/3 of the Jewish population of Europe. And yet, within 3 years, you had the State of Israel proclaimed. And since then, the Jewish community is one of the most influential communities in the world. Genocide doesn't help. And this is the one lesson I would plead with the Israelis to understand, that it was tried out against you. You were victims then. The world, sections of the world mourned for you. And you are now doing exactly the same, because what you are not willing to do is to address the genuine needs of the Palestinian people for their own state and for the preservation of their dignity and identity. If that you deny to them, but you cannot succeed because that was tried out against you and it didn't succeed then.
One of the dangers of this so-called peace plan of Trump is that it seeks to win widespread global acceptance with the promise of a ceasefire. And everybody is sick and fed up, disgusted by the killing that's gone on. People want an urgent end to the genocide, right? So the plan builds on that. But it then mixes up everything, talks about a short, medium, and long-term solution, is completely silent on all the other violations that the Israeli state is doing. In particular, the West Bank. You have an asymmetric sort of set of demands. Hamas is meant to disarm, Hamas is meant to give up, Gaza has to be completely disarmed, and so on. There is no demand being placed on the Israelis for something so simple as stop the settlements, stop expropriating land. Absolutely. They've killed, I think, 200-300 people in the West Bank over the last year and a half, 2 years. Maybe the figure is high.
Yeah. You see, may I say something? 4 of the world's most cynical people, self-centered people, got together in one smoke-filled room and came up with this piece of paper. We know Donald Trump and Netanyahu, but don't forget the contribution of Tony Blair and Kushner. Kushner and Tony sat with Netanyahu at the end. And it is as much his contribution, and we know about his contribution. Tony Blair's contribution is that he wants to inveigle himself in the good books of the Americans, but also in the good books of the monarchs of the Gulf. So these 4 extremely self-centered people got together and have prepared this piece of paper, which is laughingly referred to as a peace plan. It is not a peace plan by any stretch of imagination. You have referred very frequently to the concept of justice. Again, as students of history, I am not able to recall one instance in the last century when justice was meted out to a weak or defeated people. Justice is always grabbed, or rather the fruits of victory are grabbed by those who won. And very rarely amongst them have people been punished for gross misconduct. Recall here the Vietnam War and the atrocities committed by the Americans. Recall here the atrocities and abuses which the Americans committed in Afghanistan and in Iraq. You are aware of that, it's well documented. I don't think anyone was arrested as a war criminal. The point is that the Americans say they are not members of the International Court of Justice, of the International Criminal Court, and they have treated the International Court of Justice with supreme contempt. They have put sanctions on some of the judges of these institutions. So there is no interest whatsoever. Israel enjoys impunity. It treats with contempt international opinion. It enjoys impunity. It has ensured that successive American presidents are subordinating themselves to Israel's interests consistently and without break. Whether you have George Bush Sr., or you have Clinton, or you have George Bush Jr., or Obama, or you have had Donald Trump, there has never been a president who has been able to dictate terms of justice to the Israelis. They are above the law, above any law that exists. And they have one powerful weapon that they wield with extraordinary efficacy. The term anti-Semitic. Anyone who dares to criticize Israel is called anti-Semitic. And in the West, it means losing your job. losing employment straight away, disgraced publicly, all because of this term.
And we've seen the way in the US right now it's being used.
You have seen very recently that people who attempted to criticize the Israelis as genocidal were dismissed. There are people who maintain lists of such people. The person who died just now, who was killed recently, Charlie Kirk had a school watch and a professor's watch, where he kept lists of people who were critical of Israel. And that is where, these were, and you have seen how top American universities have been publicly humiliated and deprived of all standing and dignity by the US president, and they paid fines because they had the temerity to stand up to certain principles, justice. So I'm with deep sorrow, I must say, that I have not seen any evidence of justice. War crimes are committed. You have seen, for example, thousands upon thousands of American soldiers who have got back from war in West Asia, from Afghanistan and from Iraq and from wherever else. They've come back traumatized. They have been permanently damaged mentally because of the abuses they participated in during their operations. This is a very telling example of what they have done. So if there is any punishment in the world, and it breaks my heart to say that, this is the punishment. They have witnessed this kind of atrocities that they have done upon innocent people. There are also stories emerging, very few, because it's a very tightly controlled media in Israel. Israeli soldiers are also already mentally damaged by the abuses they have witnessed or participated in Gaza.
But again, it's the foot soldiers paying the price as opposed to the leaders.
This is always the case. Exactly. Always you will find very ordinary people, sometimes under compulsion, sometimes as part of a unit, but in the United States, the figures are in the public domain. Severely damaged young people, not just physically damaged. Physical damage you can treat. Mentally damaged for the rest of their life. Incapable of being normal human beings.
Master Talmiz Ahmad, I want to come back to one aspect of the so-called Trump peace plan, because I think it's important for our viewers to understand exactly what's being pushed. The plan refers to, quote, a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, unquote. But it lacks a concrete timeline, it lacks details. In fact, if anything, the current Trump plan makes a positive reference to Trump's own 2020 plan, which envisaged the sort of Israeli annexation of the entire Jordan Valley, which is currently part of occupied Palestinian territory, Jerusalem, of course. As much as 30 to 40% of Palestinian territory on the West Bank was envisaged by the 2020 Trump plan to permanently fall into Israeli hands. So I think this reference to that 2020 plan is ominous. How do you assess the viability and sincerity of this political horizon? And, there's obviously a disconnect between what the US and Israel mean by a credible pathway, so on and so forth, and what the rest of the world is hoping or expects. Do you think that this is going to be a source of tension, or we're not even going to get that far?
To the best of my knowledge, no politician, Israeli politician in power, as opposed to when he was out of power, no politician in power has ever publicly accepted a two-state solution. We know that Jewish messianism is resonant. The idea that this is a sacred land given by God for the exclusive use of the chosen people, and that God does not allow non-Jews to live on this land and gives the Jews the right to exterminate them, enslave them, or exile them. Israel has used all three instruments against its non-Jewish population. I am not aware that there is any politician in power who has accepted, who has challenged this messianic vision. So this messianic vision is not just confined to 8 or 10% of the people. We don't know figures of this kind. But no politician has had the courage to say that we have a two-state solution staring at us in the face. and we should move forward. Look at the demography. You have almost the same number of people on both sides.
In fact, the mainstream Israeli parties appease these millenarian or these.
Everything that comes out of Israel is suspect. It's of dubious value because the information flows are controlled. Even popular vote, popular opinion, we are told 80% support Netanyahu, 70% support Netanyahu, and yet you have 500,000 people on the streets criticizing him on the hostage issue. So I am not, as of now, sanguine about any statement on any piece of paper which suggests that there could be a two-state solution just yet. I don't think Israel has, certainly Netanyahu, let me say, has any interest whatsoever in pursuing any such agenda. What we are looking, this has been put into the background. When you come to the 2020 plan, the deal of the century, where again the Kushner, Donald Trump, and I don't know about Tony Blair, but Tony Blair's tradition is to just focus on the economic issues, because that's where the money is. You have the projects, you have your Riviera, you have the development plan, you have the multi-million-dollar projects, everyone mints money. That's what they do. And these Donald Trump and Kushner are real estate people. So I don't think so they focus on the economic side. And you will remember that the 2020 plan was treated with contempt, because everyone knows in West Asia that the principal concern in the region is for a Palestinian state. You give the Palestinian state and leave the economics to them. What you are doing is giving priority to the wrong thing. When you talk of economic development, these people's lives are so sordid and they live in such squalor, but they still demand dignity. These people know this. All these people who put together plans on scraps of paper know this. If you read the literature, it's very clear. A Palestinian boy is asked, why do you pick up the stone to throw at the Israeli soldier and take a bullet in your chest? And his answer is, my life is so miserable and I lack no standing or dignity and I lack any source of identity, I would rather die throwing a stone and taking a bullet. This should be remembered by all the people who write pieces of paper and call them peace plans. Give these people their dignity back and their economics will emerge in due course. But to abuse them, murder them, starve them, and call them terrorists, you are going nowhere. You know this. You are not going anywhere. This whole business of economic development, this deal of the century, been there, done that, heard it, rejected it.
And holding up the illusion of statehood, even as you continue grabbing prime parcels of land.
See, this is what affirms to us the Israeli view, that they are pretending that the non-Jewish population, which is half their number, can be wished away. It's like you just one day wake up, one beautiful day, and they are not there. But the fact is, the sad thing is that you have occupied territories from 1967 from West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem, and they number more than 6 million, nearly 7 million people. Possibly they are more than the Jews. Where will they go? I have read the literature in a new article in Foreign Affairs. Two Israelis have written very forcefully saying Israel's security matters more than anything else, and a hardline posture against Palestinians and against anyone who threatens Israel is the only option for Israel. There is no mention in that entire article of a few thousand words about a peace process. About what? Just think out of the box and think something else. Why don't you just discuss with them? There was a period when Israel favored normalization, and they would travel all over the place. They would go to Rabat, they would go to Abu Dhabi, they would go to Cairo for a normalization. I told them that from Tel Aviv, you go 5 kilometers to Ramallah and you can discuss normalization. You deny that and you go all over the world, and today you have seen the completely misguided approach that is. You're not going anywhere with that. But the Israelis don't have that kind of longer term strategic vision. They will have to go through a very major metamorphosis, a very major change, where this messianic view of their Bible guided plan for, or what some people call it, lease. God, in His wisdom, has given them a leasehold right on the promised land. And the promised land, God, in His wisdom, has not defined. So it can be as wide as possible depending on the power that you exercise on a particular day. But I think this is where we are. All of us would want to be optimistic after seeing the horrors that we have experienced over the last 2 years. I would love to be optimistic. But the cynical mandarins who have got together, as I said, in smoke-filled rooms, they have such dubious backgrounds and have such doubtful integrity that I would doubt that they have even a minimal interest in a state and in the identity and dignity of the Palestinian people.
And of course, if we don't create two states, if the Palestinians do not have statehood, then Israel or the territories of this region will function as one state, and that state will necessarily be an apartheid state because of demography.
You and I have studied South Africa in detail. We know that the struggle doesn't end. There also you had thousands upon thousands of people incarcerated in South African prisons, many of them very grossly mistreated and abused. Do recall, with the full knowledge and approval of the Americans, of successive American administrations, to the extent that South Africa developed a nuclear weapon despite the NPT, as did Israel. So if you are an ally of the United States, you can abuse any international law and get away with it. So this is the background that we have. And I'm not sure that there is any way that they are going to be able to move forward. Now, they are saying that they want to make life of people so miserable, so onerous, that somehow they will just disappear. The article I referred to in Foreign Affairs says Jordan and Egypt are not willing to take them back. Let's go further afield. Let's put pressure on Syria, where this jihadi leader has emerged. Let's put pressure on him and force him to take Gazans. Start with Gaza and then later. These are the kind of extremely mindless and grotesque thoughts that emerge from a people who should have a solution staring at them. After all, until Israel was proclaimed in 1948, did not the Arab and the Jew and all the other people live together in one area? Nobody called it the promised land or any land. And the factual position is they were all Palestinian. There was no ethnic divide between them. There used to be different religions that would emerge from time to time, but it never changed the core identity of those people who were Palestinians. So you had Jews, and you had Christians, and you had Muslims, and you had various shades. You had other communities as well, Zoroastrians, etc. You had all different types of people living together in a multicultural order. Now you create ethnic identities in the late 19th century and push it back 2,000 years and pretend you are a unique people. That is not historically accurate.
Let me focus, as our time comes to an end, on the region. Now, there was a statement soon after the Trump plan was made public, a joint statement by 8 countries, including important regional players, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, which welcomed Trump's leadership, welcomed his proposal. Now, reading between the lines of their joint statement, particularly their promise to engage positively and constructively with the US and the parties towards finalizing the agreement. So there's talk about finalizing. In other words, the 8 countries somewhere down the line don't regard the document that has been made public as final. Now, Axios has reported in the United States that many of the Qataris in particular are not happy with some last-minute changes that were made in the so-called...
That is the Kushner intervention.
That's right. Kushner Netanyahu kind of intervention. Do you envisage a situation where the Arab states may reject this plan somewhere down the road? And what would the consequences of this be?
I don't think
Could they kill it?
anyone
Could they
will
kill this
formally
plan?
reject it.
Okay.
It will just wither away, like the earlier ceasefire and many other plans in the past. They just wither away. Nobody stands up formally and says, this is here, come to an end. The approach of the Arab states and the Islamic states is as cynical as that of the people who prepared the plan. Their language is convoluted. They applaud Donald Trump for his sincere efforts for peace. They don't really attach themselves to seeing through any of the specifics. They don't have the capacity. Only Israel can fulfill the mandate of the agreement. And it can fulfill it. If it is reluctant, the United States has to pressurize it. I don't think on either side there is any enthusiasm. For Netanyahu, he is going to work it out with the Americans to say he will find numerous ways in which he can postpone the entire thing. Where the Arabs are concerned, they recognize that they are dealing, in Donald Trump, they are dealing with a person with an extraordinary ego, a megalomaniac, who loves to be flattered, but who takes very strong umbrage if he is disagreed with. So these people have found it expedient to give him, for the moment, the flattery, the praise, that they feel will go down well. I do not believe they take this document seriously. I don't believe it is a peace. Any one of them believes it's a peace plan. They just want to tide over this moment so that something or the other happens for Donald Trump's peace Nobel Prize.
Do you think we will ever reach a situation where the so-called international stabilization force envisaged by the plan will be put in place?
I don't think so.
So the question of any of these countries contributing troops.
You see, the thing is, after the atrocities that have been committed on the Palestinians, genocide has been perpetrated. No one has been identified for punishment. They also know in Netanyahu they are dealing with an extremely murderous and cynical leader who has always prioritized his own personal interest over the interest, very often even of his own country. The Arabs know well enough the people they are dealing with. At this stage, when they have no military capacity or political influence of the kind that is required to make a difference in Washington and in Tel Aviv, they have decided to lie low. I don't think none of them takes this document seriously. None of them believes any of its details are going to be implemented. Who is going to be part of that stabilization plan? And what will be the role of that stabilization plan? It's very fancy words used. There is only one force that will prevail in Gaza, and that is the Israeli Defense Forces. I don't believe any Arab armed forces want to come there. I don't believe any Muslim armed forces are going to come there. I don't know who is going to come. And what is their role? Is it their role to protect the poor Palestinians against the depredations of the Israelis? If the Israelis carry out assaults in the name of security? In any case, the timeline indicated is that they are supposed to come in after the Israelis have expressed full satisfaction with the security scenario.
And even then, there's no timeline for Israeli withdrawal.
They talked about destroying the tunnels and destroying this. Look, what do you need? You have seen pictures. What do you need to destroy further? But you can stretch it out. The timeline is so vague. I must confess to you, I do not believe a single Arab leader from Morocco to Yemen takes this paper seriously.
Final question. Trump's earliest comments on Gaza led to consternation, panic, anger around the world, right? When he spoke about Gazans being asked to leave and redeveloping the region as some kind of a beautiful Riviera, right? Now, this plan has elements of the Riviera, right? So it talks about following so-called model cities and so on and so forth. So there's that element is retained. But conscious of the anger that his earlier comments triggered, this plan explicitly says that people will be encouraged to stay in Gaza, that no one will be forced to leave, and that those who wish to leave will be free to do so, and those who wish to return will be free to return. But obviously there is the backstory that I mentioned. Do you think the US and Israel have abandoned that horrible Trump plan of getting everybody to leave, or do you think they're still going to find a way of rebuilding Gaza without Gazans?
I think Mr. Donald Trump has no clue about what he's talking about. This is not Harlem that you can level the old buildings and create a beautiful
Gentrified,
township.
yeah.
This is Gaza, where 2.3 million people who are not Americans are living, where you don't know where they will be rehoused, where they will be accommodated. I see no prospect whatsoever of this a Riviera. I see a Riviera way in the future when the Arab and the Israeli live together as brethren, as children of Abraham, as they did for 4,000 years. That is the occasion when you will have a beautiful Riviera and you will have beautiful towns of people coexisting with each other. And I can assure you, neither Netanyahu nor Donald Trump will be anywhere in the picture.
Clearly, that vision is simply not part of the Trump plan. On that note, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, I want to thank you for joining us at The Wire. You've been very forthright, very insightful in essentially pronouncing this Trump peace plan, so-called Trump peace plan, as not really worth the paper that it's written on. And I'm sure that in the days, weeks and months ahead, we will have occasion to revisit this topic. And I do hope that you will be able to join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Siddharth.
That wraps up this episode of Beyond the Headlines. I hope you found our discussion of Trump's proposal for Gaza useful. Do continue watching The Wire. Support the work we do by subscribing to our channel, and do consider becoming a member of our channel. You just pay a sum of rupees 99 a month in order to get benefits as a member and support the journalism that we do. Thank you very much for watching us.